Good morning. Today's story is David the Shepherd, and it's taken from 1 Samuel in the Old Testament. This story takes place in Bethlehem a long, long time ago, long before Jesus was even born. There was a family that lived in Bethlehem, and the father's name was Jesse. Jesse was one of the richest men in Bethlehem. He was good and kind and well-liked and respected by everyone. But Jesse was old, and he needed help to take care of everything that he owned. He had 7 sons who helped him look after his olive groves and his vineyards. Oh, they plowed and they sowed and they harvested the grain. And his youngest son, David, would look after all the sheep. It was hard work for David. Sometimes he would have to go very far away into the fields and hills of Bethlehem in order to find the good green grass for the sheep to eat. And he would go even further into the hills sometimes to find the still, fresh water. David loved each one of his sheep, and he took good care of them. There was no sheepfold around the sheep, so David had to protect them. And sometimes, if there was no rain, he would take them further into the hills of Bethlehem to find the good grass and the cool water. And when they were further up into the hills of Bethlehem, there were wild animals. And David would use his rod to protect the wild animals, to fight off any of the bears or the lions that might live up there. David took care of his sheep. Sometimes he used his staff. If a sheep wandered off or got stuck in the rocks, he would hold the sheep safe. And if one of the sheep would wander off, David would use his slingshot, and he would put a stone in the slingshot, and he would fling a stone, and it would land just beyond the sheep. Enough to startle it, but not to hurt the sheep. Enough to remind it that it was too far away and needed to return to the other sheep. Yes, David took good care of all of his sheep. And when the sheep had the good grass to eat and the fresh, still water to drink, David would take out his harp and he would play music. Oh, he loved playing his harp, and he loved singing. He had a very good voice. He would even make up some of his own songs. And David would think about God. My sheep eat quietly because I am watching them. They feel safe. I am safe because God is watching me. David knew that God was his shepherd. And so he sang, "The Lord is my shepherd. I have everything I need. He makes me lie down in green pastures, and he leads me beside still waters." Meanwhile, back at home, Jesse was preparing a great feast. Somebody special was coming to Bethlehem, and everyone was getting very excited. the priest, Samuel, was coming to Bethlehem. God had spoken to Samuel. God had told him to go to Bethlehem to anoint a new king. For the current king, King Saul, had grown proud and disobeyed God. King Saul was doing what he wanted to do, not what God was asking him to do. And so Samuel went to Bethlehem. And when Samuel was at the feast with Jesse, he saw Jesse's sons. And Samuel thought, oh, surely the oldest son will be the one that God has chosen. But God said no. So the next son came, and God said no again. God said no to every single son of Jesse's that was at the feast. Samuel was very puzzled. And God said, oh, Samuel, you look at the face, but I look on the heart. These sons are not right. Jesse has one more son. And so Samuel asked Jesse, are all your sons here? And Jesse replied, well, I have one more son. I have my youngest son. He's out taking care of the sheep. And Samuel said, bring your son here. And so David came from the fields. And when David had arrived at the feast, God said to Samuel, this is the one that I have chosen. He is to be the next king. And so Samuel anointed David. I wonder what it felt like for David to be anointed a king. I wonder what it felt like for David's brothers to not be chosen. The Lord is my shepherd. I have everything I need. I wonder how that made David feel. I wonder how that makes you feel.